How do we define right and wrong?
Right, what I define right and wrong is that which corresponds to that which is true.
Yeah, but you're going to define right and wrong what your God tells you.
Yes. And what are you defining right and wrong as?
There are intrinsic morals innate in us.
Intrinsic morals innate within us. I agree. My faith teaches that. It's called natural law.
But Bob, there's a problem there.
Go on.
You're talking about your God.
Yes.
What happens when we deal with the 300 gods and they've all got their different moral positions?
I know.
How do we deal with that?
Absolutely. So you deal with it by measuring truth by that which corresponds closest to reality. And the reason why we see the rule of law being undermined in our country is because our country has separated the concept of right and wrong from the concept of truth, which means that truth is simply what you make it. Well, that works for you as an individual, but what happens when the establishment decide the truth is what they make it? Because the state practices state agnosticism. It says amongst all religions, amongst all claims to truth, we don't know what's true, so be yourself, make up your own truth, decide your own moral system, just don't hurt anyone. Morality, objective morality is that which can be observed and seen apart from any ideology.
It's a little bit narrow.
It is. So one example of that, let's use natural law in terms of the fact that you would agree that human beings are born and do become moral agents of one kind or another.
They have innate morality.
Yeah, they have a lay morality.
They have innate morality.
Innate morality. So they have an innate moral structure to their consciousness. Yes. Which indicates that there is some kind of moral system to follow, but it doesn't prove it.
Well, it's self-evident.
Yeah, it is self-evident, you're right. So, now in terms of that which is what we can draw from that, we can draw certain lessons by looking at the world and seeing how it is and what it indicates about how we should live. Yeah?
Well, we can draw objective morality from ourselves.
Draw objective morality, that's you're making my argument, that's what I'm saying.
From ourselves. We don't have to look at the world because we know...
Are we part of the world?
We are, but we don't have to look at the world, we just see it ourselves.
You just see it in yourself?
Yes, because you don't want to be harmed.
You don't want to be harmed. So, thank you. You've just indicated an objective moral standard.
That was my point, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't need God for that.
However, in terms of anchoring that objective moral system, so that it cannot be subverted by any ideology, political or otherwise, you have to anchor that moral structure on a claim of truth. And a claim of truth doesn't make any sense if there isn't a God.
I would say the opposite.
Do you believe that
God is used to undermine that morality?
Let me ask you this question. Do you believe that there is such a thing as truth?
I believe that there's an objective morality.
Do you believe that there's such a thing as truth?
Well, I'm a mathematician, so there are truths in mathematics.
You're still equivocating. Do you believe that there's such a thing as truth?
It depends on what we're talking about.
Truth. Something that corresponds...
You want to say the truth of God, for example, then I'd have to say no.
No, I'm saying something that corresponds closely to reality.
Is it true that I'm here? Yeah, it's their objectivity.
Right.
Yeah, we can't argue against skepticism. It's impossible.
No, we can't.
No, we can't. But we can say, sensibly, that it's axiomatic, but we can say there is an objective reality.
Thank you. So there is an objective morality. So who defines
reality? I would say an objective reality.
Reality from which we
I do
can
also
draw.
agree there's an objective morality.
From which we can draw truths. So, for example, we can draw the truth that the point of sexual conduct is reproduction. Agreed?
Yeah, gene propagation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So gene propagation is the point of sexual conduct, right?
Yes.
Not pleasure.
At the reduced level, yes.
Not pleasure.
Yes, but the pleasure comes from the fact that you...
Pleasure is the reward that you get for reproducing.
It's what encourages you to...
But the point of sexual conduct is not pleasure. So we can draw from this objective reality certain sexual moral truths.
Yeah, but there's a little bit of a jump because for most people at their conscious level, the purpose of sex is for pleasure.
Because of a political ideology that has told them so.
No.
Not because of any grounding in truth.
No, because it's intrinsic to human beings to feel pleasure when they have sex.
The license to pursue pleasure is a cultural, political agenda that was born in the 1960s into our modern culture. Before that,
Are you suggesting
much
that
before,
cavemen didn't derive pleasure from sex?
of course they did. I'm not saying they didn't.
So it was
What I'm
always
saying-
there, didn't
no,
it? It was
no.
1960s.
No, you're conflating things now. What I'm saying is that we can draw from the reality that sex is about reproduction.
Scientifically, yeah.
Yes. That therefore the point of sex is not primarily pleasure, but that is a secondary accident to the incident of reproduction.
I disagree.
Okay, you disagree. However, you're arguing against what is obvious.
No, I'm not.
You're arguing against an objective
I'm
reality.
saying they're two separate things. There is reproduction and there's pleasure from
And
sex.
this, ladies and gentlemen, is how political narrative distorts our
We've
perception of
already
reality.
agreed that cavemen had that experience before this politics.
No. What you're doing.
Do animals have pleasure?
What
when they
you
have
are
sex?
doing is distorting the reality that is obvious to all, which is what is the point, the maximum point of sexual pleasure?
There isn't any point to it.
Yes, there is. It's called ejaculation. And what happens
That's
at
for a man.
ejaculation?
That's a very misogynistic viewpoint.
What's the point of the female orgasm?
Lubrication.
No, it isn't. Gosh, dude. Anyway, I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say the obvious. The point of the female orgasm is to draw up.
Yeah, that too.
The point of the female orgasm is to draw up the sperm.
Yeah, no, I agree. I accept that.
Right. So the maximum point of the pleasure of the sexual act is connected directly to reproduction.
I'm not denying that these two things exist, but from our conscious selves, we seek pleasure.
No, that is what you have been formed
No,
to think
it's a fact.
by a liberal society
No, I disagree.
who in the 1960s gave itself over to a hedonistic culture.
He's a Christian too.
Yeah?
It's okay.
The pursuit of sexual pleasure as an end in of itself is contrary to natural conduct.
No, I totally disagree with that.
It is like a man who eats not to sustain himself, but simply for the enjoyment of the flavour of food.
Which they do.
And that is also contrary to what is naturally, intrinsically
Most of our
rooted
eating,
in the natural order.
is not for sustenance.
I agree, and that is why, as a moral system, you would say it is wrong to be gluttonous, and it is wrong to practice sexual licentiousness.
Right, but you could argue that in a secular fashion, because if you overate, you would have the experience of obesity potentially, and your body would break down.
And which
so
secular authorities are arguing that exactly?
scientists would argue, nutritionists would argue that.
No.
They're not religious.
They are not saying that it's morally wrong. They're just saying that.
What do we mean by moral? We mean right. We mean
exactly.
We mean desirable and undesirable.
No. No, that's what you're defining it
No,
as.
no.
That's what you're defining
No,
it
I've
as.
seen a definition where it is that.
No, that's what your definition is.
How do we define right and wrong?
Right, what I define right and wrong is that which corresponds to that which is true.
Yeah, but you're going to define right and wrong what your God tells you.
Yes. And what are you defining right and wrong as?
There are intrinsic morals innate in us.
Intrinsic morals innate within us. I agree. My faith teaches that. It's called natural law. Do you know what natural law is?
From conscience, right? Like the inner voice of conscience.
Do you know what natural law is?
Please enlighten me.
Do you know what natural law is?
Please enlighten me.
Is that a yes or a no?
Let's say no.
Okay, right. I'm going to take it as a no.
I did say no.
Swallow your pride. There's nothing wrong with admitting if you don't know something.
I know.
Yeah?
I know.
Swallow
A
your
drop in
pride.
the ocean.
There is nothing wrong with admitting if you don't know something.
Keep
Do
going.
you know what natural law is?
I don't. You go for it. That's easy for you to say.
So
Go.
natural law is the Christian doctrine that God, as He created the natural world, structured it in such a way that we can draw from it lessons of truth. lessons of morality.
Right, but you still haven't dealt with the fact that I am saying that there is an objective morality without God.
What I am saying is
You
the
need
very...
to demonstrate that, I think.
So let us look at the very idea of objective. What underpins your moral system?
In evolution.
Evolution.
I've evolved to be a social creature.
Okay, so you believe that evolution is the thing that you should draw a moral system from,
We
right?
don't draw from it, but it's innate in us and it comes from evolution.
Right, do you know what social Darwinism is?
Well, social Darwinism, I believe, is where society evolves.
No.
Okay,
Social Darwinism was a philosophical movement in the 1900s up to 1945,
right.
taking its cue from people like Nietzsche and also the theory of evolution that there were different races and that some races were better than others.
It's nonsense.
Yeah, it is nonsense. But evolution, if you're going to use that as the prism, the narrative by which you decide your moral system, well, evolution is about survival of the fittest.
But you couldn't even
So
use
that
that against animals.
so that those that survive are then able to breed. So survival of the fittest is about who I can dominate.
Yes.
Yeah, is that your moral system? You what?
Evolution doesn't have totally everything to do with domination.
No, there are
It's just
examples.
those that can acclimatise to the
what Bob's saying
environment
is we
more
could-
suitably than other
Bob's saying is we
organisms.
could
Yeah.
Those are
derive
the
from
ones that survive longer, therefore pass their procreate. pass
But
their genes
the theory of evolution, if we used it as a narrative, a prism by which to construct a moral narrative, would mean that we need to make all the earth bent solely around our own survival.
Yes, but it would break the objective morality of the fact that human
And
beings
that is not
don't
what my
like
faith
being
teaches.
harmed.
You want?
It would break the objective morality of the fact that human beings don't like being harmed.
This objective
So when we were
morality,
dominating others, we are harming others.
this objective morality that you're indicating
Yep.
is exactly, I agree with you, it is a fact. And so what it shows us is that there are objective moral truths in nature that we can draw from to understand what is morally right and morally wrong.
So where does God come in?
Right, so where does God come in? For me, God is the one, the author of all creation. Yeah, you are saying that there is no moral order. You're saying that there is no God, right? So what you really want
I'm
to
not
debate
saying
is whether
that.
God
I'm
exists.
a soft atheist. I'm not saying that.
So what it seems to be saying, what you seem to suggest is you want to argue that God doesn't exist.
No.
Right.
I have the default position. God doesn't exist until you compel me.
But there is
to believe
there
in
is such
God.
a thing as truth.
Well, it's contextual, but yeah,
Contextual to
whatever we're discussing.
contextual, it's so vague. I don't actually understand what you communicate.
It's very difficult to detail, but I mean, mathematics, as I said, which is my subject,
So what's to
has
stop?
issues around
Here-
context.
here's why we need God to underpin objective morality.
We don't.
We do,
No, we
because now we have a disagreement between us. I say he's wrong,
No,
and
you
he
don't.
says I'm wrong.
No, you don't.
No.
You do accept
No,
that
hold
none of
on.
us want to be harmed.
Do you
That's
believe
an
in abortion?
objective morality.
Do you believe in abortion?
Do I believe it exists?
No. Do you believe that it should be practiced morally?
It's a difficult subject.
And that's not an answer to the
I
question.
cannot give you that
Are
answer.
you
There is-
undecided?
No,
Are you
it's
undecided?
a contextual problem.
Are you undecided on it?
No, I'm not undecided. It's
So,
a contextual
are you?
problem.
Do you agree with it or disagree with the practice of abortion?
I cannot give you a definite answer on that
Why are you vague?
because I cannot give you. It's
Have
a
you come
complicated.
to a moral conclusion on the question of abortion?
No,
You haven't.
no.
So it's still up in the
Because
air
it's
for you.
contextual.
Still up in, fair enough, that's fine if you haven't come to a moral conclusion. But what we have is two truth claims and I believe two moral systems. You have indicated that you want to base your moral system on evolution. I believe it should be based on revelation. We disagree. This is why you need God, because God allows you to have a common narrative. What we don't have at this moment is if we have no by, all we have is a competition. A competition in which the one who is stronger wins.
But Bob, there's a problem there.
Go on.
You're talking about your God.
Yes.
What happens when we deal with the 300 gods and they've all got their different moral positions?
I know.
How do we deal with that?
Absolutely. So you deal with it by measuring truth by that which corresponds closest to reality.
That's mine.
So you say that's yours. You say you say that you simply should live a life in which you don't hurt others, right?
I think it's the basis of objective morality.
So it's Buddha's.
And by harm, for example, if we steal from someone, that harms that person.
It's essentially a sort of approximation to Buddha's moral system.
Can I ask a quick question, clarification? By harm, do you mean cause pain?
Yes, but it could be mental pain, anguish.
Yeah. So in terms
Pleasure
of
and pain, utilitarianism.
yeah. So in
And
terms
seeking pleasure would be the extra thing there, right? From the utilitarian.
but who
happiness
defines what is pleasure? Because your pleasure may be another person's pain.
Right, but then I can't violate that. I can't harm that person, so...
Then that means that you should probably
I mean,
not.
utilitarianism talks about seeking pleasure.
So,
don't talk
so
about
you
actually...
should probably. So if you were to actually practice this principle, yeah, there'd be very little that you could actually do.
Well, you could raise
Because
psychopathy, for example.
everything that we do causes someone pain. Your purchase of that bag, your purchase of that watch, your purchase of those trainers will be connected to a social system that is built intrinsically on injustice.
Yes.
So seeking not to do harm is insufficient. Christ gives you a better moral example. He says to love, because love is proactive. It isn't simply seeking to avoid harming others, it is actually to seek what is best for them. No, let me just deal with this point. So here we have two moral systems being proposed. One by the atheist, who says avoid evil, avoid hurting other people.
No, I'm not saying
One
that. I'm saying
that
that
is what you
intrinsic.
said.
That's
That is what you
intrinsic
said.
to us.
What I have said is that Christ gives a better moral example. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. So that means the good that you want for yourself, you should pursue for those around you. So one is simply about avoiding hurting others, and the other is about pursuing what is best for other people. Now, which of these two moral systems will produce the most good?
You're asking that question?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
You have no idea. I'm confident that it's Christ.
I'm not confident either.
Because no charity was ever set up because they simply were trying to avoid
The
hurting
problem
people.
with religion is that it can be subverted.
No, hold
we
on.
see that constantly.
Hold-
So I'm undecided. on that.
No, I'm not.
Linguistically, you shouldn't start with a sentence which the problem is.
Oh yeah, we had that earlier.
Yeah. So the point that I'm making to you, no charity has ever been set up because someone said, I want to avoid hurting people, so I'll set up a charity. No, charities get set up because people think, shit, there are some homeless people on the street and no one is looking after them, so I will do something about it.
Yeah, but that doesn't have to be a Christian thing. You can extrapolate the morals and the ethics
Well, they're being harmed.
from a,
I mean,
from a
it seems-
doctrine and
Yes.
use that. And I don't have to be a Christian
And that
to
is
do
the
that.
liberal project for the last 300 years,
No, I
and
don't
it
buy
has
that.
failed.
But I can do that on an individual level.
That is entirely what the Enlightenment project is. The
I'm talking
Enlightenment.
about myself.
I know you are.
I can extrapolate the
I
morals
know
and
you are,
ethics.
and all you're
I can
doing-
live my life in the same
And
way
all
that
you
can.
are doing is repeating a narrative that our society has bestowed to you from the
I'm an
Enlightenment.
individual and I'm
No,
living
then-
my life on the moral compass that I set myself.
So you need to. That is exactly what society has taught
So
you to
unless
do.
I follow your book, I'm not going to be as moral as you.
I am saying
But
to
Bob,
you.
they-
That is exactly what I'm saying.
early man
That is
formed
exactly what I'm saying.
society. Early man
Because
formed
hold on,
society.
let me
Without God.
address this brother's point. Because the fact is, what you are echoing is exactly what our society has been trying to do for 300 years, to extract the moral system of Christianity from the Christian doctrines that underpinned it. And what has that resulted in? It has resulted in the very undermining of a concept of truth upon which the basis of the rule of law is established. And the reason why we see the rule of law being undermined in our country is because our country has separated the concept of right and wrong from the concept of truth, which means that truth is simply what you make it. Well, that works for you as an individual, but what happens when the establishment decide the truth is what they make it?
But you're not,
And decide
you're not
that
arguing for
Tommy
moral
Robinson
relativity, are you?
is an
I'm not-
extreme
I'm
right-wing
objective
fanatic.
morality, I'm
Because
saying I follow my
they
own
are
moral
creating
compass
their
based on
own
my
truth
No, but
and
there is an
deciding
objective
their
morality.
own moral system. And that's what you're doing. You are echoing as an individual, and I agree it's probably nothing like as harmful as what the liberal establishment are doing. But the liberal establishment are doing it as a collective with power, and you're doing
I'm
it
not
as an
talking
individual.
about them.
But I
I'm
am.
not, well, you are, but I'm
still
not.
Because
doesn't
you are
explain.
echoing what they are
No,
doing.
you think I am.
That is what you're
That's
doing.
your perception, that's your paradigm.
Does our
that's
state-
that's the prism through which you're looking at it.
Are you an atheist or an
No,
agnostic?
I'm neither.
Neither. What do you
I'm
believe?
not a label.
You're not a
I'm
label.
a free thinker. How about
Okay,
that?
a free
Sorry
thinker.
if that doesn't categorize
No.
me in the way that you find
No,
it easy
it
to
does
to
perfectly.
challenge.
It does perfectly
camera
because
is
you're
an
just
atheist.
that's exactly what the Enlightenment is all about. Free thinking.
Oh,
Read
yeah.
Kant. Read Kant.
So-
I'm not making it up.
So it's
Kant is the
immoral,
father.
It's immoral to be a free thinker.
Kant is the father of the Enlightenment. He was the one who coined the phrase "be a free thinker," and he used the story of Abraham to demonstrate that point. So yes,
Oh,
you
so because
are.
one person said it means he has the
What I'm
total
saying is,
monopoly
you're
on it.
using terms and you're ignorant of where they've come from. You're using an ideology and you're ignorant of where it has come from. What you are.
Truth is not an ideology. Morality is not an ideology.
I agree, truth is not an ideology.
But you're making it sound like because someone said it before and philosophized about it, therefore I've echoed it or I've said it.
That is
from
exactly
them.
what you've done.
But it's ridiculous.
So what? That
It's
is exactly what you've
ridiculous.
done. That is exactly
So
what
you
you've done.
can't. So you can't have someone just be a moral person because it must have come from a philosopher that once said it. And
A-
therefore, I'm echoing it.
A moral journey is much like any other journey. You need a map and a compass. And without a map and a compass, all you're doing is guessing. And that's
Can
what
we
you're
get
doing.
back to the multiple
You're
gods?
just guessing.
I want to hear about the multiple gods.
You're just guessing. But I want to deal with his point because he really doesn't understand how his personal, individual attitude is exactly what the state is doing. Because the state practices state agnosticism. It says amongst all religions, amongst all claims to truth, we don't know what's true. So be yourself, make up your own truth, decide your own moral system, just don't hurt anyone. But the state, when it practices that collectively, decides to invent the truth. And so it labels all of these people wrongly.
But the state is hurting people.
I
And
agree.
we can agree on
It
that.
is.
So
It
don't
is.
think that people on this side are not acknowledging that
because
truth as we are.
Because this moral system that you're seeking to follow is not rooted in reality.
If you were to leave Christianity
I'm not seeking to
tomorrow,
follow it,
Yeah.
it's a truth.
would you become an immoral person?
I would become a less moral person.
Right, so less moral.
Yes.
So why not totally immoral?
Do you know what sin is?
No, hang on.
I'm going to address your point.
No, let's not do question. Let's
Okay,
do question
yeah,
answer.
all right. Question, answer, then question.
So, did that not make sense, that question?
So ask your question again, so I'll answer.
Okay, so if you were to give up Christianity tomorrow,
Yeah.
would you become an immoral person?
I would become a less moral person.
Well, why not totally immoral?
Right.
Because according to your logic,
Sorry.
you can only be a
You
moral
have asked
person
a question.
if you...
One
Bob,
second.
Bob
if
actually did
you
agree with
follow your
objective
book.
morality.
You have asked one question, I have answered it. Now I will ask you one question.
That didn't answer it.
I did answer it. You said to me, if I became a Christian, would I become a immoral person? I answered the question by saying I would become a less moral person. So I have answered your question. Now it is your turn. Now, yeah, you can do.
But do you
But
think
now it
less
is
objectively
your
moral or
turn.
relatively
Now it is your turn to answer a question.
Yeah, but Bob, are you saying you're less...
Now it is your turn to answer a question. Now it is your turn to answer a question. When you free think your moral system, yeah, what is the touchstone that you base your moral theory on? What is that thing that decides what's right and what is wrong?
Bit of touchstone.
So let me clarify. You have said, I am a free thinker. I think for myself, I make up my own moral system. Sure. Right. So when you're deciding this is right and this is wrong,
Yeah.
what criteria are you using?
I can feel it. I can observe it.
So emotionalism.
Now that's another question. Now my turn.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Your turn.
Objective morality
we
is the
can,
answer.
We can do
We
this
can do
like
this.
silly, childish,
Yeah.
like one-word answers.
Well,
things
we're
if
not
you
having
like.
to shout, which is an improvement
you know.
on the Islamic
But
dawah
you can
team.
see, you created this frame of one-word answers, and it's not really going to lead to anything.
Right, your
productive,
question.
Okay?
I agree with
so
that.
are we going to do these one-word answers? Is
Your
that how you're
question.
going to do it? Okay.
Your question.
Okay, fine. So why is it then, if you were to give up Christianity tomorrow, would you only become a less moral person and not a totally immoral person if, by your own logic, that you can only find your moral compass if you follow this book?
Yeah, and the answer to that is
Bob didn't actually
the
say
answer
that.
to that is yeah, I didn't. But the answer to that is a really simple
fairness.
one. The fact of the matter is that if I was to leave Christianity tomorrow, a lot of my moral structure, a lot of my moral narrative would still be influenced by my Christian faith. In the same way that for most of the history of the UK, even though since the Enlightenment it has been moving steadily away from its Christian past, its moral framework has still been informed by its Christian past. It's like if I gave this brother a £20 note and then he gave you the £20 note, where did the £20 note originally come from? It came from me. So, in our society, that's what we see. We see the fact that even though people like yourself are saying, I'm a free thinker, I'm not a Christian, still having lots of morals that accord with the Christian faith, because our culture has been Christian for over 1,000 years, and that juggernaut of history doesn't just disappear overnight. But as our society has moved increasingly away from its Christian faith, it has brought in more and more laws that are contrary to the Christian faith, such as the liberalisation of divorce laws that are the root of destroying families amongst, destroying families amongst white working communities.
But it's doing that regardless of
the abortion laws, which are allowing white working communities to kill their own children and to prevent them from having the next generation. The litigiousness in terms of the
It's rambling.
no, I'm giving examples.
Can you give us an example?
No,
of
let me
immorality
finish.
that-
Let me finish. So these laws, like the abolition of the Sabbath law, which has meant that increasingly workers in the UK are being abused by their employers, who force them to work far above and beyond any kind of norm.
I mean, you are straw manning quite a lot. Basically.
I would say that you're straw manning, but you know, that is the nature of Speaker's Corner. So, and this, ladies and gentlemen, is how Speaker's Corner was before the Islamist thugs came to try and take it over. This is how Speaker's Corner used to be. But then the Islamist thugs came and they tried to establish. Shamsi the First tried to establish his little caliphate here with his gang, and he tried to intimidate people. You know, now. But let me deal with this question. What do we do about all these other religions? Because it is a question.
Because they're all going to say their book is
Okay, yes,
objective truth.
absolutely. Truth, ladies and gentlemen, is that which corresponds closest to reality. Okay? Truth is that which corresponds closest to reality. Now, we don't receive truth without it being interpreted to us. We interpret the truth around us through a narrative. We think in narratives. So the narrative, the narrative, no, that's part of it, but the narrative by which you interpret the world around you decides for you how much of the truth you're able to access. So, in terms of what I believe is the truth, I believe Christ is the truth. He is the embodiment of truth. He is the grounding of reality for me. So, in terms of those other teachings, like let's look at Buddhism, which says that the way to get into the next incarnation, a higher reincarnation from this one, is to avoid the wheel of suffering. And what that results in is that Buddha basically went and sat under a tree for 20 odd years and didn't really get involved in the world around him. Muhammad followed and taught a religion that could be summarized as having an ideology that is based upon submission. Blind submission to a set of rules that, amongst other things, institute slavery, adultery, rape, and paedophilia.
But that's not too dissimilar to your book.
Now, what does my faith teach? What does Christ teach me to do? He teaches me to love my enemies, to love my neighbor, to love myself, to love my God, to love my community. Tell me, do you have any problem with that?
Absolutely not.
Do you have any problem with that?
But we don't need Christ for that.
We don't. I'm
So
like that
who was-
already.
but
So
who
how
was
is
it?
it I'm like that already without
Right.
your book then?
But you're not. That's the point. You're not, because it's
You're
because
trying to
we've
make out that you're
it's because we've had 1,000 years of this teaching in our culture that you understand that love is the highest maxim. That's why you need Jesus.
And that comes back to the argument you're saying 3,000 years ago they were immoral.
Look at our society
Which they
today.
were not.
Look at our society today. Our society has increasingly moved away from the teachings of Christ. increasingly moved away from the teachings of Christ. And what has that resulted
I
in?
thought Christianity was growing.
It's in this country now. It has resulted in family breakdown, in the license to abort your children. It has resulted in a abuse of workers. It has resulted in an increase in injustice.
Well, I don't believe in abortion. I think it's murder, right?
I agree.
Now, I'm not a Christian. How is that possible? How is that possible that I've got
And
that
where do
belief?
you think
No,
you got
how is
that moral
possible?
framework from?
No, how is that possible?
Where do you think they got the moral
No,
framework?
I asked the question.
Okay, you inherited it from the Christian
Can't actually
culture
call it
of our
murder,
age.
guys. You
Oh,
can't
think-
call it
you think
murder
I've
because
ch-
it's
I've
not
tapped
actually
into-
illegal.
What about the
You can't
secular,
avoid it.
What about the secular understanding it's okay, the pro-choice argument? Why have I not tapped into that? Why have I chosen the pro-life
Yep.
answer
Yeah.
rather than the pro-choice? And
Right.
I'm not a Christian. How have I done that then? How have I done
To
that?
try and bring home to you just how much Christianity has influenced everything that we are as English people. We can't even communicate to one another without acknowledging the influence of the church, because the grammatical structures that we use to speak English were formed by two books, the Book of Common Prayer and the Bible. They normalized the English language.
Bit of a stretch.
It is not a stretch,
where
it's
is the
history.
stretch, man?
Learn your history. Because, and this is the point, this is the dupe that the establishment have played on the English people, is that we want to distance ourselves from our own culture and from our own history and from our own identity. So that when someone praises two of the greatest
Bob,
literary works in the English
You were
language,
despising the view over this side that this gentleman's actually agreed with you. Answer
No.
his question. He has. He said he doesn't
No.
agree with
Allow me.
abortion.
I don't agree with abortion. How is that possible,
How is that
if I'm not a
possible
Christian?
if he's been liberalised?
because
If I've been liberalised
you
like
have
you said
been
I have.
influenced by the Christian culture, which is your inheritance as an Englishman born in this country.
10 minutes ago you said I've been liberalised.
You have in many ways.
So why is it that I've chosen in this particular topic to believe in the Christian
Because
faith?
influencing a worldview is not a total sum game.
Right.
It isn't a case that. It isn't a case that. It
Yeah.
isn't a
You
case.
can pick and choose.
Yes, you do.
Right, so that's my
Right.
initial
And
argument.
I know it is, but the point is, brother, when we do that, when we pick and choose our own moral system,
Yes.
what we are saying is that we are the moral arbiter. And if we are saying that we are the moral arbiter, that means that we can make the moral choice to do wrong.
I'm not saying that. He may be saying that, but I'm not saying
And
that.
that's why
I'm saying
you
there is
need
objective
Jesus
morality.
to
I'm not the
ground
arbiter.
your reality, because you have made yourself the moral arbiter, and I am not suggesting.
But it's okay if
One
I
second.
don't believe in abortion.
One second. You have made yourself the moral arbiter,
Yeah, sure.
and I am not saying that that means that you have suddenly decided that you're going to stop murdering people and robbing. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that now that you have decided that you're the highest moral authority, in theory, potentially, tomorrow, you could decide that what is morally bad is something that is morally good to you. And that's why it's a bad moral system.
So could a Christian. So could a Christian. It doesn't matter. You're
No,
your
no,
own. You're your
Bob's
own
right about
agent.
that.
You're your own agent as a person. You've got free will. As a Christian, you can do that as well.
Right.
You're done.
I've got to go.
It's getting hot.
I've got to go. It's 4 minutes. I've got to go at 3 o'clock. I just want to deal with this brother's point. He said, so can a Christian. Of course, a Christian can go against the teaching of their faith and make themselves the highest moral arbiter, and then go on to do and decide and do something wrong. In fact, every Christian still does things that are wrong. We're not here saying that we are above everyone else, that we're morally superior to everyone else, that never do anything wrong. What we're saying is that we acknowledge the reality that truth has to be grounded in that reality.
Yeah, exactly.
And that truth, therefore, has to be the basis that we decide what is morally right and morally wrong. And we seek to cultivate that moral system, that moral life into ourselves. Yeah?
Yeah.
So that and that's the difference between us.
No, it's not. That's fantastic. You do that, but so does everyone else, and so do these people, because they have
I
their own.
disagree.
They
That
have
is
their
not
own.
what I heard
They
from this
have
guy.
their own moralities.
I don't
They have their
have
own
my own
moralities.
Thank you.
as well.
They have their own morality.
and that's fine.
I
You
do
call
not
it
have
blind.
my
You
own
call it blind
morality.
following. That's fine. Another thing that Christianity teaches is acceptance and tolerance.
Choosing my
But
morality.
Who says that we teach acceptance and tolerance?
is that not part of Christianity?
No, that's a liberal hoodwink. You see, the
Okay,
point,
fine,
the
fine,
point, the
fine.
point about liberal society is that it tries to tell you what Christianity is. Liberal society and the liberal media try to tell the Christians what our faith is because they want the Christians to conform to the establishment's agenda. But the reality is that we Christians do not take our knowledge of the truth from what the liberal media says as Christianity.
Excuse my naivety.
We take
Do you
it.
agree with acceptance
We
and
take it.
tolerance as a
We
person,
take it. We
as a
take
human
it.
being?
We take it from the apostles and the prophets' teaching, which means that we don't tolerate everything. We don't accept everything. And we are able to say when society has gone wrong, and it has gone wrong, and the people that are suffering the most from it are the white working class,
agree it's gone
my
wrong.
own community.
We agree it's gone wrong. We're saying that God is not the answer.
And I would say, anyway, guys, I'm going to have to go.
It can be as answered.
It was a pleasure speaking
No, I mean
with you.
globally,
Pleasure
generally,
speaking to
appreciate
you.
your
Pleasure
absolute
speaking to
pleasure,
you.
sir. Really
Yeah,
good.
you look after yourselves, guys.
Yeah, we'll talk again.
All the best in what you're fighting for.
Thank you.
Brother, you've been listening very intently. Let me ask you this question: have you got a smartphone?
I have, yeah.
Download the Bible app.
Download the Bible.
Download the Bible app. Have a read of it. That's right.
I love the guy, but he's a Christian.
How you doing, man?
I'm all right. I've got to go, brother.
No problem. But
Gotta go.
are you still techie-phobic? Because I want to bring you on the gin and tonic show.
I am techophobic. If you want to do the gin and tonic show with me,
Yeah.
we need to do it in person.
Oh, we can't do that. We do it online with Google Hangouts. So
I
you're
am.
not able to get on.
I'm not in the. Well, then in that case, I need some kind of studio. I need some kind
I
of
know,
studio.
but you can't do it at home or whatever.
No, I'm not. I haven't got the home environment where I could get involved in this kind of thing.
Fair enough.
Yes. Anyway, but if you want me to get involved,
Yeah, I would love
we
to.
either can do it in person.
Can you,
You're
trying to spread the word.
Are you here every
Is
Sunday?
your biggest problem the environment? I mean, techie-wise, you can use your phone, that's
He's here every Sunday. 1 to 3.